morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. One of the first things an attacker does after entering a system is literally run a command to understand who am I inside this environment, right? So, hi, I'm Flávio Costa. I've been working in cybersecurity industry for about 17 years now, and I'm here today with one simple mission to turn a real ransomware incident into something useful for everyone. So, if you're a technical guy, you get technical insights. If you're not, don't worry. I'm going to translate everything to normal human language. And, after all, ransomware affects everyone. It affects IT, security, leadership, HR, and, mainly the business operation. So, here's how we're going to navigate this session. So here's what I prepared for you guys. So before we dive in, I want to explain why this webinar exists and what do you take home today. But this talk is basically a journey, right? So it has 3 stops: ransomware as a service. So I'm gonna talk about this franchise model, what it is, how it works, their ecosystem, and all backed by a real case involving an APT called AvosLocker or AvosLocker. So this is not going to be a theoretical attack, in a sandbox environment with perfect conditions. This is the real deal. And I'm going to cover all the aspects of this attack and show what happens in real life. And that's what it makes this webinar different from, any other presentation or webinars you guys have seen on the internet. And a lot of people in a daily basis respond to incidents, but few people actually take it to the next level, right? Turning the incident into something reusable, into threat intelligence, at the end of the day. So this third block is going to be about the instant response to the MITRE attack contribution. So I'll cover not only to how to map behavior to TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, but how to write a defensive narrative and publish as a community resource. So what I'm going to tell you guys isn't just another war story. I will show you a complete intelligence lifecycle based on the most up-to-date best practices. So this is the agenda. Think of today like a guided tour inside a ransomware incident, but with a map, with a flashlight, and also a fire extinguisher. So we're gonna split this into 3 big phases. First, we'll do a review of some of the most important concepts that we need to understand in order to, have the best information out of this webinar. So this part is like explaining the rules of the game before the match starts. So even if you know it already, it makes the rest much easier to follow. Then we're gonna go to the real case where the incident becomes a movie, but also a lesson. And finally, the lessons learned. So this part is like the fire drill, about defending against ransomware, not if it happens, but when it happens, and how do we survive with minimal damage. So with that being said, let's start first with the CyberQ chain framework, so we can easily understand all the stages of an attack through the concept of the CyberQ chain. So this is a term that was originally used as a military concept related to the structure of an attack, which was basically identify the target, mobilize the forces, and order the attack, and of course destroy the target, right? So breaking this chain, this attack chain, is a precisely method of defense. So when you know all the stages of an attack and you have visibility of what is happening or what is going on, things become easier. So think of it for a second, like it is better to stop an attack in the reconnaissance phase, on the first phase, or at the beginning of the action phase, where, for example, the attacker is already exfiltrating data from your environment. So the sooner we identify it, the better, less costly, and for that we need visibility, and of course we need intelligence. So the CyberQ chain concept, that framework, is the application of this military concept but to the cyber world. So it's a traditional framework developed by a company called Lockheed Martin and widely used. Of course, there are several adaptations of this framework, but this version right here, it describes a complete scenario. An external actor trying to compromise a network, and thus, the stages of an attack are divided just like that. And by better understanding all these phases and how do they work, we can recommend solutions. We can recommend, how organizations can actually defend against more sophisticated attacks. So think of it like a storyboard of a planned robbery. Not magic, not chaos. It's a sequence, right? And attackers, they usually follow stages almost like a checklist. Of course, not always is like this waterfall schema. Sometimes it's more agile, but everything starts with research. The attacker needs to understand about your environment, and based on that information that they can access, they're gonna customize a weapon, or prepare their tools. They're going to develop their malware, the payload, the phishing templates, scripts, or like in our case, for this specific webinar, they would just find someone that already did all the work, and they're gonna buy something on the dark web, buy their code, and use that for the attack. So it goes through the deliver phase, which can be something more direct or indirect, like a phishing, for example. And they're going to exploit vulnerability in the environment, establish persistent backdoors, remote access tools, and of course they want to stay in, so they will try to establish that persistence and control the system remotely, to stay stealthy, to send commands and download more tools, like a burglar calling their crew saying, hey, I'm here, bring the truck, let's move all these files to something else, let's move all those objects to somewhere else. And finally, the action on objectives. Now, this is where the real goal happens. This is where we can see the attacker behavior, and not only the behavior, but their main goal, right? So the attacker's intent, it's going to be clearly presented on that phase. It's going to be exfiltration, data theft, like disruption, some kind of disruption, like a distributed denial of service attack, a ransomware. So this is when they steal the valuables and sometimes burn the house down on their way out, so they can just hide their tracks. So in a nutshell, guys, understanding this skill chain helps us answer one critical question: at which stage could we have detected and stopped this, right? So the earlier you stop the chain, the cheaper the incident becomes. But here's the problem with this approach. It's kind of limited, so don't get me wrong, it is good, but it's kind of generic, right? There's something missing. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's no details, right? There's no description of behavior. And as I said, it's kind of a waterfall approach. It's not agile. So, you know what I'm saying? This is where actually another organization called MITRE came in. So to explain the missing part of this puzzle and show the attack behavior, to add the attack behavior to that storyline, MITRE created a project called ATT&CK. So MITRE ATT&CK is a project that began in 2013 with the goal of mapping the main tactics and techniques used by attackers. So the point here is to create a globally accessible living book, like this knowledge base with information used by attackers based on real-world observations. So think of it like a living book of TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. It's like the Wikipedia, but for real attacker behavior, right? So if the kill chain is the movie script, think of MITRE ATT&CK like the list of scenes and actions inside that movie. And in order to understand the TTPs and what TTPs are, it's easier if you give value to indicators of compromise. And that is precisely what the pyramid of pain does. So this is a concept created by David Bianco, and actually turns to an RFC now. But this concept explains how much pain it can causes an attacker when you block something, and when you deny the attacker the chance to use their resources against you. So the basic principle of forensic science is every contact leaves a trace. So the contact your adversary makes when they access your network is the information you need to understand their objective. So not all IOCs are created equal, and some are far more valuable than others. So this concept, it gives you the way to measure the potential usefulness of your information. So it also measures the difficulty of obtaining that type of information, that threat intelligence. And we can say that the higher on the pyramid, the more resources your opponent will have to spend. So why is understanding the TTPs, the tactics, techniques, and procedures used by adversaries important? Because this level of threat intelligence, it helps you to fight the adversaries back. So this becomes clearer when we put data into context. So IOCs are nothing more than observables, that is, artifacts that we can observe in a network or operating system, which can be indicators of an attack as well. So what indicators is, it's something like, in an analogy, if you think like, what is the indicator that something is on fire? It's smoke, it's one of them, right? So in a cyber attack, we can observe several indicators which are evidence of compromise in a forensic analysis. So at the bottom here, we have things like hashes, IP addresses, domain names. Those are easy to change, right? It's like trying to identify and block a thief's shirt collar. It's superficial. Today the shirt is blue, and you look for that on the cameras for blue t-shirts, but tomorrow they will show up wearing a different shirt color. So that's easy for the attacker and low pain. So the main objective of this is to respond to them, and once you can respond to them quickly enough, you have denied the adversary the use of these indicators in an attack. So the PAM calls to adversaries when you receive a block of list of, let's say, 3,000 IP addresses. And as an administrator, you're going to block those addresses in your firewall, in the firewall rules, right? So the IOCs of this attack campaign, when you block all of those IOCs, the pain is minimal for the adversary and enormous for the administrators. And for a simple reason, if a single IP address, 3001, is created and used on this attack, all the block you did based solely on those indicators will just not be effective, right? We cannot rely a defensive strategy based on block lists where a single miss is going to affect you. So that's the single opportunity that the attacker is looking for, that they need to have access to our environment. And we can reach a very important conclusion from this. Having threat intelligence is not the same as using it effectively, right? It's not enough to have, state-of-the-art tools. You also need a state-of-the-art humans. You need well-trained human beings to actually handle properly all the technology. So the pyramid will measure the potential usefulness of the information, but it also measures the difficulty of obtaining that threat intelligence information. The higher it is, the more resources your adversaries will have to spend. So if we move up to that pyramid, you guys gonna notice the TTPs, the tactics, techniques, and procedures. So when you detect, respond to, and quickly disrupt your opportunities, from the attacker to actually hit you, your defense strategy becomes an attack strategy. And a central communication model was actually missing, so that everyone could speak the same language in cybersecurity, making the use of this intelligence and this information more effective. So this is the importance of MITRE ATT&CK. So think of this, like in the super simple analogy. Traditional security advice sounds like lock your car, take the keys with you, park in well-lit areas, leave no valuables inside, check your surroundings. All of this is good advice, but here's the problem. it tells us what to do without actually explaining why it works. Of course, we all know it's a simple analogy, but we don't have the adversary perspective. So MITRE ATT&CK changes the mindset. So it is more like thinking the way a criminal thinks. So if I want to steal a car, first I will try to look for unlocked cars, right? That's easier. There's nothing, easy like that. If there's no cars unlocked, no problem. I'm gonna pick up my toolkit, like a key jammer, to disable the car keys if I'm close enough to the car owner. So this device is similar to a remote control, but I can remain stealthy, right? I don't need to actually approach at first the car owner, because the jammer works like scrambling the electromagnetic signals of the key, preventing the vehicle from being actually locked. So I don't want to get caught, of course, so I will operate in low light areas, and I will target people who appear distracted and alone. So in this case, what will be the objective here, or rather the tactic? It's vehicle theft, right? I want to steal something. And what technique I'm using in this case? A key jammer. So now that we understand the attack, the attacker behavior, we can use it actually as a defense mechanism to improve our defensive capabilities. So in this context, I would recommend more modern electronic locks that uses encrypted rolling codes each time the key is activated to prevent key cloning or this jammer. I will make sure the car is actually locked, but the action alone wouldn't necessarily be the only response. We can have recommendations more aligned with a typical cybersecurity approach. They are still advised, such as not leaving valuables inside the car. But the two approaches, they complement each other. So can you see the difference? On the left here, we're gonna give rules to follow, but on the right, this is going to help us understand the adversary's perspective, so we can make more informed decisions, even in scenarios the rules don't explicitly cover. So in cybersecurity, this is the difference between compliance-based security, where you just follow a checklist of controls that you need to do because the auditor says so. And on the right, we have threat-informed defense. So here we can understand adversaries and build defenses based on their actual behaviors. Both are important, don't get me wrong. You absolutely need a baseline for best practices. You need to lock your doors, but you also need to understand behavior. So MITRE helps us stop playing defense blindly and start predicting behavior. And this slide looks kind of overwhelming, and that's normal because there's a lot of information in here. But this is one of the examples that we have in terms of a matrix. So that's the attack enterprise matrix, specifically for Windows. And think of it like a giant board game. So we have the tactics, and it's very it look like the cyber framework. The tactics on the columns are the what, right? So it's the stage of the attacker of the attack behavior. So we have 14 tactics that represents this attack lifecycle, and techniques and sub-techniques are the how, right? So each box below is a technique an attacker will use in that stage. The key here is that the attackers, they don't need all of them. They just need a few that work. And on the other side, for the defenders, we don't need to block everything either. So the goal here is to identify what attackers use most and build detections around those patterns. So this is why attack is powerful, right? It's not a tool list, it's a behavior map. Simplifying all those terms: tactic, the attacker's goal, why they're doing this; technique, how they do it, like what actions help them to reach their goal; and procedure, it's just a real world example. So translating this, for example, tactic, initial access, that means I want a way in. Technique, how I'm going to do it, meaning I would trick someone into clicking on my phishing email with an attachment. And the procedure is the real story, like APT 29 sent targeted emails, like with spare phishing, with malicious PDF as attachment. So the value here is that attack takes something, generic and vague, like they attacked us, and turns it into a specific statement like initial access via phishing link, followed by execution and persistence. So even if you don't know how it works, the document gives you that information. In a nutshell, this is the reason why the attack framework exists, because older models were too high level, just like the CyberQ chain that we saw at the first, and they were good for explaining attacks broadly, but not good for building detection and response. So attacks make security teams stop guessing and start actually defending based on evidence, right? Okay, so now that we understand the CyberQ chain, MITRE attack, we have our foundation in place. Let's talk about ransomware. So the threat we are ultimately dissecting today from the AvosLocker group, to properly explain what it is, to explain ransomware, I want to start by tackling three mistakes or misconceptions when dealing with this type of attack. So first, treating ransomware like a malware type. It is not. I know it's kind of confusing, but hang with me there. So the second misconception, think of it like an endpoint problem, right? And the third one, relying on prevention mechanisms only. So ransomware is of course one of the most common types of malware. I'm not saying it is not, but it's in theory and in simple terms, a malicious program that prevents users from accessing their files by encrypting them until a ransom is paid. That's the simple explanation. But that's the literal and superficial explanation at the same time, because it all starts with the right mindset, guys. So don't think of ransomware anymore like just a type of malware. It's more than that. Think of it like a full operation and map that to the MITRE attack framework, from initial access, privilege escalation, lateral movement, data theft, and then the final impact. So the second big misconception here is think of ransomware like it's an endpoint problem. In reality, if we take into consideration more mature ransomware attacks, they spread through the environment by abusing identity, remote management, exposed services. So what matters here the most is not the encryption event itself that takes place on the endpoint. It's everything that happens before it, when the attacker is actually positioning, making their moves. And now in the AI era, AI is changing, drastically the economics of attacks. So we have automated reconnaissance, better social engineering, faster exploit development. So for example, when phishing is written by AI, the success rate jumps from 12% to 54%. So that's 4 times higher, right? But there's always two sides of a coin, right? So it's also enabling defenders with behavior analytics, automated threat hunting, and predictive models as well. So the arms race continues, like always, just at AI speed. And one of the reasons ransomware wins is time. All right, so attackers have enough time to spend, trying to attack someone, and we as defenders, we need to be right all the times, and we have limited resources, limited time, and it's not a good equation for us. So organizations often detect intrusions very late, and attackers, they can compress executions into just a couple of hours. And most of the times, it's not a fancy zero-day attack. It's just lack of cybersecurity hygiene, and most of the times also an over-reliance on prevention solutions instead of a proactive approach. And security needs to be proactive. And nowadays, even worse, we have ransomware as a service. So it's a business model. And one of the most important shifts is the rise of initial access brokers. So instead of one actor doing everything, access is sold like a commodity. So here's a VPN credential that I'm selling to you guys. And here's a RDP foothold. Here's a compromised administrator account. And as you guys can see here, from the threat we are looking and dissecting on this presentation from Avos, it's an example of a ransomware group showing interest in purchasing network access on a dark web forum. So ransomware becomes modular, scalable. It's like a supply chain, right? The commodity ransomware model from 2020, it evolved into a stratified economy of something that we call big game hunting. It's a highly specialized ransomware as a service operation. There's an entire ecosystem of offerings, right? So that removes the barrier of entry to some extent. You don't need to actually know how to develop a ransomware payload. You just need to have the motivation and the money to go to the dark web forum and buy it. So that allows low sophistication threat actors to purchase tools that can be used to launch attacks, in some cases, distributed a ransomware threat to victims for free, just in exchange of a small commission whenever a ransom is actually paid. So we have the developer, we have the initial access broker, we have the affiliates, that runs the intrusion and executes the attack. We have the exploiting infrastructure that supports the delivery, supports the staging, and we have also the money launderers to move, the payment. So you don't actually need to know anything. You just have to be like a criminal. That's pretty much it. So when we defend against ransomware today, we're not talking about a specific type of threat. We're not just defending against a tool. We're defending against a service model, right? And this is why defenders struggle. Fragmentation and shared tooling, faster time to impact, extortion first operations, and of course the attribution becomes harder because multiple affiliates use the same ransomware family, the same codes. So it's kind of difficult to attribute the attack to someone. So now that we have all the schemas and all of that information, I will show you guys the specific ransomware family detected in this case study, which is called AvosLocker. So AvosLocker is one of the Ransomware-as-a-Service families that came to fill the void left by groups named like Revol. At the time in 2023, it was not as prominent or active, as Lockbit, for instance, but it made a name for itself. And the FBI released an advisory specific on this threat. So this is relevant, right? And customers of the AvosLocker service, the affiliate threat actors, they have this very nice GUI with a management panel to create new ransomware samples, to manage their victims, to get statistics about their attacks. And that threat is specifically targeted both Windows environment, but also in many cases Linux as well, ESXi infrastructure. And they're also using methods like double extortion. So it's not the ransomware itself, it's the victim shaming, to force their victims and their partners or even customers, to actually force them to pay the ransom money. So what matters for defenders here is not just the name AvosLocker, it's the behaviors, right? This is why I say brands die, tactics live on. So even if a ransomware group disappear, their behaviors are recycled by others. So for now, in 2026, AvosLocker appears dormant. So multiple sources report there's less activity from mid 2023, and their leak site it ended around that same time. So treat AvosLocker as a case study for ransomware as a service, and focus on transferable TTPs, right? And mitigations rather than the brand name. So in ransomware, brands Die, TEDx live on, so affiliates, tooling, playbooks, and even the payload code can migrate into other name, to other ransomware-as-a-service programs. So AvosLocker is still a great case study, but not, a top active 2026 crew nowadays. And this slide right here, it shows the observed attack attempts across countries during their activity window on actually April in 2022, about a month after the incident. We are actually analyzing here. A company called Trend Micro released telemetry data on AvosLocker activity and the attack attempts. So one important note that I want to make sure everyone understand here is that all those telemetry maps are useful, but they are not a perfect photograph of the reality. So they often reflect where the sensors are reporting and are detecting, the coverage are strongest, but the value here is trend awareness, right? So which regions were heavily targeted and where defenders were seeing the most signals tied to that ransomware family. But the top affected data tells us that where they are more active, but it doesn't tell us where they won't attack, right? So we don't have to, we can't actually analyze that information that way. And now I want to show you guys the business front end of a modern ransomware, and also the leak infrastructure. So this might look like a small detail, but it's huge into how professional these groups became. So take a look at this. I mean, even the leak site infrastructure is managed like a service, right? There's queues, there's uptime management, there's this user-facing interaction design. So that reinforces the point that it's not just malware; it's an operational platform that have marketing, that have psychology built in, and when you get in, you see what the pressure model looks like, because this is where the extortion, pressure becomes real. Victims are presented like items in a marketplace. So anyone can view, for leaks, or sometimes even buy their data sets. So that shows the second monetization path beyond ransom, right? Even if the victim doesn't pay to decrypt their files, the attackers can still profit by selling the stolen data. So in modern ransomware incidents, the breach has two outcomes: integrity and availability impact over the encryption and, of course, the downtime of the operations, and confidentiality impact with the data theft and resale. So this is the other side. This is, the part executives often see first, unfortunately. So that's the victim-facing support portal, which is basically the negotiation interface. So notice the language and the red flags here. AES 256 military-grade encryption, recovery support, traditional additional charges if you delay. So this is the psychological pressure. It means it means to look official, and like Thanos, inevitable. But from a defender perspective, this portal confirms something very important. The attack expects interaction. They are running a standardized workflow across victims, right? And once a victim engages, the next time is the payment process. So this is a classic payment portal flow: the price, the crypto options, the instructions. So this clearly shows how ransomware has become an industrialized system with billing logic, with deadlines, customer service, and note the orange in the the warning in the orange box right here about crypto wallet. So ransom crews, they know victims may get hit by a secondary malware like a clipboard hijacker. So this is kind of funny, to know that even criminals, they warn each other about other cybercrime risks. And this is also another fascinating event of honor amongst thieves. The attacker decision making. So they realized that victim was a government entity from the U.S. and they changed their approach. So whether it's fear of law enforcement response, political consequences, or negotiation strategy, It's unclear, but it is part of their affiliate rules to not compromise US government agencies. So it shows that ransomware is not purely technical, it's business logic and risk management on their side too, not only from us. So from the case study, guys, here's the core problem. The environment looks segmented, but the trust boundaries were weak and they existed only on the documentation, unfortunately. So they have left the DMZ open, like that. There was no DMZ at all, and the VMware Unified Access Gateway, the UAG right here, it was acting like the entry point for remote access. And the critical detail is it had direct access into the internal server environment, and from there, the domain controllers had direct reachability to the core data center hosts. So once the attacker got a foothold on the edge layer of this network, they weren't stuck in the DMZ because it didn't exist at all. So they could pivot into authentication infrastructure and then into everything. So this case was strongly linked to a vulnerability called Log4j and multiple Horizon-related CVEs as well. They were very relevant at the time. And even one exploitable weakness at the perimeter becomes catastrophic when the architectures allow direct paths to the crowd jewels, to the most important servers in your environment. So the lesson here is actually simple. Treat edge services as hostile zones. Assume breach. Segment your network. Segment Unified Access Gateway, segment VDI, enforce least privilege paths, and most importantly, monitor PowerShell and WMI activity from day zero, because that's where the attacker playbook shows up early. So this is the foundation of the entire attack. Everything that follows, all the lateral movement, the credential theft, the ransomware deployment, it all started here. So I don't want to go over all the details and all the executions over time, but I want to highlight that this was detectable well before the encryption day, weeks before the encryption itself. So the signals were there and the attackers repeat the same behavior over days. Just take a look on the amount of PowerShell executions. So come on, 86 PowerShell scripts downloads and executions via WMI provider host. And we have the parent service. So all these patterns, all this activity, they are very consistent with hands-on keyboard control, and the environment was already talking to us, but their organization wasn't listening. So security needs to be proactive. We need to investigate immediately what spawned the scripting engine. Was it interactive, scheduled, remote? What user context is executing it? What endpoints show lateral spread patterns, right? These were high quality detection opportunities, but they were missed. So nobody was watching. This is the tragedy of this incident. Not that sophisticated adversaries found a way in. I mean, that can happen, of course, but they use advanced techniques? No, they didn't. These are all well-known methods, all mapped into the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And the tragedy is that every step was visible, every technique was detectable, but nobody looked. That's the main point. If you're only looking for ransomware at the encryption stage, you're late. The attacker already won weeks earlier, right? The only thing left is the final act. So only in March, they actually proceed with the escalation, the remote executions, and unfortunately the ransomware. So at this stage, defenders often misread, everything as noisy IT work, and only until it's too late. But this is the moment where containment might still work. So we need to isolate the affected systems, cut lateral movement routes, force credential resets, and break remote control channels. Because once the attacker has stable internal access, the path to exfiltration and encryption becomes actually operational planning. So here's a summary of the top of the pyramid of pain, the concept I introduced earlier, the tooling, behavior, fingerprints that characterized this intrusion style. And here we're seeing, even legit software like AnyDesk, the restart of computer in safe mode to actually use this as an evasion technique. Cobalt Strike, you know, signatures, mimikats to steal credentials, the double extortion, and the no-go to public sector as well. So if we do the threat model and put into practice what we learned earlier, this slide shows the full cycle, and it matters because you know, we should be able to disrupt the attack earlier, you know, way before the final stage. So here we give names to all phases, and intention becomes clearer. But notice here the time bar. It takes like hours or months to recon, to weaponize, but it only takes seconds to actually exploit. So that's why, you know, the dwell time is dangerous. In our case, they have 3 weeks of dwell time. So they stayed in our infrastructure for 3 weeks, and the installation through command and control phases, and 3 weeks where we could have detected and you know, actually prevented the attack from happening. But we can detect reconnaissance that happens outside of our network. Of course, we can control what is being you know, out there, but we cannot actually prevent everything. We can detect weaponization because that happens on the adversary infrastructure, but delivery onward, every single phase should be detectable. So the most important message here is, if your detection starts at action, you will lose. Simple as that. So instead of using the CyberQ chain to map all the TTPs and talk about the attack details, I want to use the TTPs and you know, based on that report 1 month later that Trend Micro actually released on April 4, 2022. So step by step, I'm not going to follow all the activities because the most important message here is, you know, what actually was repeated in terms of behavior. So log4j, that's the exploit that was used. And here you guys going to see all the logs. And of course, if you reach out to me at the end of the presentation over LinkedIn or my social media, I will give this material to you guys, no problems at all, right? So here we can see all the stages, all the execution, all the logs from a single tool, from the EDR solution that was presented on the environment. But the tragedy here is that they have the investment on the solution, but it was not being seen by any administrator. So we can see the download web shell, the WMI execution. We can see obfuscation in base 64 for all the commands that were executed, and we have that visibility. So take a look on the decoded base 64 command, the PowerShell command to download the string for this very suspicious IP address in a very suspicious port. So we were seeing everything. Look how many Cobalt Strike beacons were detected from time to time. You know, the defensive goal is simple. Don't let them stabilize. Even partial detection could have been enough to stop the intrusion, of course, if the response is fast. So we can see all the zip files, the PowerShell to run mimikatz using a legit process called run-dll32. We can see another encoded PowerShell command created a communication port on the local host via another very suspicious port. So this IOC is huge, and we had a lot of detection opportunities like PowerShell script block logging for the event level visibility, the anti-malware scan interface integration, alerts on suspicious download execution patterns, and hunting for management host processes, spawning scripting engines in also unusual contexts. You know, AnyDesk being used, and that's exactly what they did in terms of a perfect example of why allowed remote tools need governance, right? Otherwise, how would you block a legit binary from a legit application like AnyDesk, but being used for a malicious purpose? So that's the challenge, right? And they used AnyDesk to establish that persistent remote control and also transfer other malicious files like this scanner.exe to several computers in their network. we shift from preparation into impact behavior. So we see a lot of executables and zip files here, and multiple scripts causing triggers for the following events that were not detected. I mean, they were detected, but they're not being seen by the administrator. Multiple repetitions, registry key modifications, text file creation with ransom notes. The big lesson here is if your SOC only triggers detections exists, but it's too late. So they will trigger everything, but it's too late. We need to detect earlier. And this is where architecture and telemetry converge. We need segmentation, least privilege, the zero trust concept being applied here. And of course, endpoint visibility to prevent a single foothold from becoming a company-wide crisis. So you can see the software mentioned here, like PDKey deploy. It was used to distribute a bat file with the payload that leveraged this college name. So the victim here was actually educational company, and that was the final payload itself that was trying to getting hide into a folder of a well-known cybersecurity vendor to try to bypass antivirus solutions, that have exceptions configured for those well-known vendors, right? So this is very interesting as well. And if I take my analysis, my incident response report 1 month earlier than the analysis and the report that Trend Micro did, one month after, look how many TTPs repeated, how many of the behaviors we could see. So this is one of the most important slides, because the initial access on this report was another exploit on Managed Engine Service Desk Plus. It's another application. On my report, it was Log4j. But the main point here is that tools change, names change, payloads evolve, but tactics techniques, they stay consistent. That's why I said brands die and tactics live on. I'm not just teaching you guys, another ransomware family. I'm actually teaching timeless defensive principles. So with that, we close the loop. What really caused the incident to succeed? It wasn't only a vulnerability, it was a misalignment. So the conclusion here is that the real root cause was misalignment. The endpoint was technical. There was a patch gap, yes. Lateral movement was enabled by the architecture. Flat network enabled that to, getting moved to a lot of different places. But the incident became catastrophic because of process and people failures. Alerts were not reviewed, response was not triggered, recover was unclear, escalation paths were not, practiced. So the real root cause was misalignment. Technology without process is just expensive noise, and process without people is just a document that nobody reads. So that's the conclusion. They did all the investment. They, bought the best of breed EDR solution on the market that was implemented on all the endpoints, but in monitoring mode, not in quarantine mode. So that generated all the alerts, as early as February, but it was only detected on the action phase when the ransomware actually struck. So to get things to an end, guys, that is the personal and professional part at the same time. So during this incident response I worked personally, I realized something. If we only keep these findings internally, the industry loses the chances to learn from it, right? So since at that time I couldn't find any information online about AvosLocker, I decided to write a public report on LinkedIn, an article about it. And I intentionally remove all the sensitive details and anything that could expose the victim. But my objective was to turn this incident into education, turn observations into something repeatable, into repeatable knowledge. And the reason is very simple. Ransomware groups, attackers, adversaries, they scale by sharing playbooks. And we, as defenders, need to scale by sharing lessons. And that decision triggered a bigger outcome. So this incident became an official MITRE ATT&CK campaign entry. So if you guys navigate to MITRE ATT&CK, that's campaign code C0018. And that's how I could contribute to MITRE ATT&CK framework and got my name in there on the contributors area. So this is how an incident response case become threat intelligence that benefits everyone. So the key message here is this: instant response and good documentation can become community intelligence. So those are all the contribution workflows, from evidence preservation, building the narrative, a clear timeline, publishing open report on LinkedIn, that also called back then Cisco Talos attention. So they published the same information on their official blog. I mapped the behaviors to the attack techniques and sub-techniques, did the cross-reference using public report that was available later, submit to the MITRE reviewers, and that was published just a couple of months later. There's a lot of good material that you guys can leverage for ransomware defense. I particularly love the community defense model on the 2.0 version, because that follows the IG1 group for the CIS best practices, the CIS controls, which is also called cybersecurity hygiene. And if you follow just the cybersecurity hygiene principles, you can actually detect 78% of the existing techniques. And if we map that to another well done work did by the Ransomware Task Force, which is a blueprint for ransomware defense, we all know that NIST framework is like huge. There's a lot of information in there, so we cannot go into all the functions and all the categories and subcategories, but we can start with basic principles like the 40 safeguards, 14 fundamental, 26 actionable, that cross-reference that framework. We also NIST protection. And I did this slide to you guys, so if you're in the middle of a ransomware incident, you didn't have time to read all that documentation, that's what mattered. That's what you need to do first. Activate the incident response plan to isolate and stop lateral movement. So containment is priority number one. Identify the ransomware TKPs to validate the group, the scope, what is the infected system, the compromised accounts, the patient zero. That's also important. And third, determine whether data was exfiltrated, because that changes how you respond to the attack as well. We need to avoid some common incident response mistakes, like shutting down systems that lose volatile memory, so you're not going to preserve all the information. And one extra tip: check decryptors at nomoreransom.org, because sometimes the decryptor is already there and available, so you can respond and recover the information without any losses. There is a good documentation here that I definitely recommend to you guys to read: the incident response recommendations and consideration for cybersecurity risk management, especially for ransomware as well. I left a lot of documentations, a lot of special publications from NIST in terms of protection and also in terms of response, so you guys can take all that as well. And this is where the threat landscape is going and what to expect this year in terms of attacks. We're gonna see a lot of AI for sure. That's gonna increase the number of phishing and other types of attacks that are powered by AI for sure. Ransomware-as-a-Service specializations, more brokers, less of this big ransomware group or this big gang. Credential markets, they're gonna keep scale. Info stealers, session hijacking, all of that. Faster time to impact, hybrid targets, because we're seeing a lot of the environments not only on traditional on-premise data centers but also in the cloud. So we're gonna see that as well. And extortion-first operations growth, like data theft, business email compromise. That's gonna be huge as well. And what that means for defenders, we need to shift to left. We need to apply concepts like continuous threat exposure management. We need to take a lot of attention on identity, because we need to assume that identity first security, MFA, PAN solutions, session protections. We all know that hackers, they don't break in, they just log in. Remember that I talked about the initial access broker thing, right? So that's one of the reasons why we need to take a look on that. Assume breach segmentation and rapid containment playbooks. We need to apply the philosophy of zero trust, and of course, cybersecurity hygiene, right? Immutable backups, clean room to rebuild. That's the recovery engineering that we need to take into considerations. Okay, so here is the key takeaways for these presentations that I'm leaving to you guys, and I know I'm out of time, so if there's any, that's the full journey from real AvosLocker style incident to attack mapping to a defensive blueprint that you can operationalize. And if you take one thing from today, ransomware resilience is not a tool, it's a system. So thank you all for your time and attention. If you want to connect, exchange ideas, receive the material, or continue that conversation, here's my QR code with all my social media. Well, it all depends on the security solutions you have in place, right? It all depends on capabilities you have. But if you go to my publication on MITRE ATT&CK, you're going to see there's a lot of good advices in terms of what the TTPs are, the techniques, and also the mitigations and the data sources. So you can start from there, bring that information to your security solutions, and from there, see if you have anything that relates to this attack, to this behavior. And remember, it's not that those TTPs are only related to AvosLocker. It can be related to any other ransomware group or any other affiliate. So the important thing here, it's the outcome. Am I protected to the most common used techniques by ransomware groups? That's the answer that you need to answer, actually. Well, to practice, I would say there's a lot of ways to practice without, actually attacking your own environment. There's a lot of good resources out there. Of course, EC Council has a lot of great courses that teach us how to leverage that information, how to use it, and how to operationalize as well. You can go to the EC Council page, and of course, you're gonna find a course there to use, for example, another tool called MITRE Caldera, which is a framework to test the TTPs in your environment, even for specific groups or specific threat actors. So I know because I did it, and there's a great course there where you can practice that information using real TTPs, but in a simulated and safe environment. Well, it depends on the phase, but here on my presentation, I have that mapped as well. So let me just go back to that slide and talk to you about the most common ones. So instead of giving you the answer in terms of what techniques are, more or often used by AvosLocker, I will tell you the techniques that are most common in a lot of different researches and reports, like the Mandiant M-Trends report, the IBM report, all of them saying that the top 5 for initial access at least is phishing with URL or malicious file, compromised credentials, vulnerable public application, external remote services, and compromised or malicious websites. Those are the top 5 techniques that are used for getting initial access into the environment. So that's the first opportunity that you have to detect those techniques before anything worse happens in your network. Unfortunately, from what we have seen in the history, since back into 2023, there was a lot of companies that decided to pay, and that's something very, individual. That's very personal to each organization. But I would say the recovery is best practice. Is like, do you have backup? Is that segmented in another environment, in the same production environment as well? Because if that was compromised, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's AvosLocker or it's any other type of ransomware. If you don't follow the best practices, you're not gonna have a best recovery process, if I may. I don't know if that makes sense, but at the end of the day, the recommendations are the same regardless of the ransomware group. The management roadmap to tackle ransomware before the attack. Well, if we take into consideration, if you're saying before the attack, that can actually translate to different things. We can take into consideration before the attack, since the reconnaissance phase. So how can I limit the level of exposure of information from my environment, from my employees, and that kind of stuff. So I can monitor dark web to see if there's anyone talking about me, talking about my company. I can monitor if I have exposed services that shouldn't be exposed. I can monitor if the exposed services have vulnerabilities, and I can also understand if those vulnerabilities are related to attacks that happen in the real world. So CISA has a vulnerability database called KEV, KEV, which stands for No Exploited Vulnerabilities. So you can start from there. And if you go to other attack phases, like for example, command and control, that's more inside of my network. So I need to monitor and take into consideration what it's communicating with what, and try to establish segmentation in my network. Try to see if I have this DMZ and if it's properly configured, if other security solutions follow their best practices, if my servers and workstations are hardened. For example, I cannot have like PowerShell for workstation computers for regular users, right? I need to disable that. And in that environment, for example, of my incident response report, PowerShell was freely open with admin access to anyone. So that's not acceptable, and that, of course, does not follow the best practices. Stay vigilant, stay informed, stay secure, and thank you all for joining me today.